All right, so are you ready to dive into something pretty intense?
Always. What do we have?
Okay, well, things are escalating quickly in the DRC, and it could have a huge impact on the entire region.
I've been following it closely.
Right, so the M23 rebels, and we think they've got Rwanda backing them up. They've taken Bukavu.
Wow, that's the second largest city, isn't it?
Yeah, a major trading hub in eastern DRC, and it comes right after they took Goma, too.
So it seems like they're on a roll.
Yeah, and it's got everybody super on edge, like, is this going to turn into a regional war?
That's the big question, isn't it? What's driving this conflict, and what's it going to mean for the people caught in the crossfire?
Right, and that's what we're going to try to unpack today.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Well, I think what's really striking is just how fast and how aggressively the M23 has been advancing.
Yeah, it's not just that they're capturing these cities, it's that they're facing almost no resistance from the Congolese forces.
Like a hot knife through butter, right?
Exactly, and you've got civilians and soldiers just fleeing in panic.
I was reading that even a World Food Program depot in Bukavu got looted.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just adding to the chaos, and, it raises serious concerns about a humanitarian crisis.
Absolutely.
I also came across this really chilling account in Al Jazeera where a resident talked about having to transport the bodies of two men who were killed by soldiers right in their own home.
Jeez.
It really gives you a sense of the fear and violence that's gripping the city.
Yeah, no kidding. So this begs the question, what's going on with the Congolese army? Why can't they hold their ground?
Right. Are they just outmatched when it comes to equipment and training?
Could be. Or maybe morale is low.
Or maybe there's something else going on, like internal divisions or a lack of political will.
It's possible.
But one thing's for sure, the international community is definitely paying attention.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the UK Foreign Office, for example, came out strong, condemning the M23 advance. And they put the blame squarely on Rwanda.
Interesting.
They even issued this warning about a potential wider regional conflict.
I mean, it makes sense. Eastern DRC has been a tinderbox for decades, right?
It's also complicated with the ethnic tensions, the political instability, and of course the fight over those incredibly valuable mineral resources.
Yeah, I mean, those resources are vital, right?
Totally. Our smartphones, our laptops, all the tech we use, it all relies on those minerals.
So this isn't just some far-off conflict. It's got real implications for us.
Exactly. And Bukavu itself is a key part of all this.
How so?
Well, it's not just a major trading hub, it's also central to the gold trade.
And smuggling.
Yeah, so by taking Bukavu, M23 isn't just gaining territory, they're gaining the control of a really important economic artery.
Makes sense.
So to recap, we've got a rebel group making serious gains, a Congolese army that seems to be struggling, and a very concerned international community watching from the sidelines.
Right.
But what about the people of Bukavu? I mean, what are they thinking and feeling as all this unfolds around them?
Well, it's complicated. There are actually some residents who are welcoming M23.
Really?
Yeah, they're fed up with the Congolese government. They see it as corrupt and ineffective.
So they're hoping for change.
Yeah, they're hoping for stability, for a chance at a better life.
Wow.
There is a quote in the New York Times. One resident said, "Maybe they'll finally bring peace. We've suffered enough."
But, I mean, there must be others who are terrified.
Oh, absolutely. There are plenty of people who've seen the brutality of war firsthand, and they're scared of what M23 might do.
So it's this mix of hope and fear.
Yeah, the city's kind of holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next.
It's got to be so tense.
Absolutely. And to really understand this whole situation, we need to talk about Rwanda's role.
Okay, so Rwanda denies any involvement, right?
Oh, yeah, they're adamant about that. They say they're just worried about the safety of Tutsis living in the DRC.
And they're bringing up the Rwandan genocide.
Exactly. They're talking about how Hutu extremists massacred hundreds of thousands of Tutsis in 1994.
And their argument is that those same Hutu groups are now in the DRC, threatening Tutsis there.
That's their line. It's a powerful narrative, and it taps into really deep historical wounds.
But the UN's not buying it.
Not really. They've got this report from a group of experts that claims there are like 4,000 Rwandan troops operating inside DRC.
Whoa.
Yeah, they're basically saying that Rwanda's M23's muscle, they're the ones calling the shots, providing the firepower.
Okay, so the motives here seem pretty murky. I mean, the M23 has always said they're defending Tutsi interests, but some people think they want more than that.
Yeah, some analysts believe they're going for political power. Maybe they want to carve out a piece of DRC for themselves.
Or even topple the government.
Could be. So are they exploiting the Tutsi issue to gain a foothold in the country? Is this all a smokescreen for a power grab?
It's a possibility, right?
It definitely is. And here's another twist. The new leader of the M23, their political leader, is a guy named Corneille Nangaa.
Okay.
And guess what? He's not even Tutsi.
Wait, seriously, so they're fronted by a non-Tutsi while claiming to fight for Tutsi rights?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
What's the play there?
It could be a strategy to broaden their appeal, make themselves look more inclusive.
So it's like they're trying to rebrand themselves as a movement for all Congolese.
Possibly. Fighting against a corrupt and ineffective government. That way they can tap into wider grievances and attract support beyond just the Tutsi community.
So it's a much bigger play.
Could be.
It's like they're playing chess on a whole other level. But while all this was going down, the African Union was having its big summit, right? And it sounds like the DRC conflict was a major topic there.
Oh, definitely. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres was pushing hard for a peaceful resolution. He was really worried about things escalating across the whole region.
So he was advocating for dialogue and a ceasefire?
Yeah, but he also highlighted the humanitarian crisis that's unfolding in eastern DRC.
Right, because people are suffering.
Yeah.
But I read somewhere that some people felt the AU's response was kind of weak. Like, they should be taking a stronger stance, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of frustration. People feel the AU hasn't done enough to control Rwanda or put real pressure on M23.
So what are people calling for?
Well, some are saying there should be stronger sanctions, maybe even military intervention.
Military intervention, wow.
But let's be real, getting everyone on the same page, especially with powerful players like Rwanda involved, it's not going to be easy.
It's such a tangled web.
It really is.
So we've got this really unstable situation, a rebel group that seems unstoppable, a regional power possibly calling the shots, and the international community struggling to figure out what to do. What's it all mean for the people in Bukavu? I mean, you mentioned that mix of hope and fear. What are their lives actually like right now?
It's pretty bleak, honestly.
In what way?
Well, reports from organizations like the Norwegian Refugee Council are talking about massive displacement. Thousands of people have fled their homes.
Where are they going?
Some are ending up in overcrowded camps, some are staying with relatives, but food is scarce. Prices are going through the roof, and the fear of violence is constant. The New York Times interviewed this mother of 4 who had to run from her village when M23 attacked. She said they walked for days with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Her kids are hungry, and she has no idea what the future holds.
Oh, it's just awful. It's a nightmare.
It is.
So I guess the big question is, since M23 is in control now, what kind of rulers will they be? Will they actually bring peace and stability like they said they would? Or will things stay the same?
Well, it's hard to tell at this point. It's still pretty early. Actions speak louder than words, and right now the evidence is kind of mixed.
What do you mean?
Well, there have been reports of M23 fighters harassing people, demanding bribes, even carrying out executions.
Oh, no.
But then there are also reports of them providing food and medical aid, trying to restore order, even setting up these makeshift courts to handle disputes.
So they're trying to project this image of, like, being in control, being fair.
Maybe. It's too early to say for sure what their real intentions are. Are they just trying to solidify their power, or are they actually trying to build something new?
It's like they're trying to play both sides. Tough, but fair.
Right. And that's why it's important to keep a close eye on what they do in the coming weeks and months. Will they try to reconcile with other ethnic groups? Will they actually try to fight corruption and make life better for ordinary people? Or will they just become another predatory force?
Yeah, it's a wait-and-see situation for sure. But how does this new leader, Corneille Nangaa, fit into all of this? I mean, is he actually in charge, or is he just a puppet?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it?
He's a bit of an enigma.
Yeah, some analysts think he was chosen specifically because he's not Tutsi.
Really?
It could have been a calculated move to make M23 look more moderate and less divisive. He's been giving interviews, talking about unity and development, but, it's all talk for now.
Until it's not.
Exactly, but let's not forget about the elephant in the room, the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. Rwanda. They've got a long and complex history in this region. They've intervened in DRC before.
Right, to protect their interests and the Tutsis.
Right. But some people argue that there are also economic factors at play.
Like what?
Well, they say Rwanda wants to control DRC's mineral wealth, especially in the east.
All those conflict minerals like coltan and cobalt?
Exactly. They're essential for our electronics, but they're also fueling this whole cycle of violence and instability. It's tragic, really. Our demand for the latest gadgets is contributing to the suffering of millions.
It's a messed up situation.
It is. And it brings us to the big question for the international community. How do they deal with this crisis without making things worse?
Right, it's a tough one.
They can condemn Rwanda, they can impose sanctions, but they also have to be really careful. If they come in too heavy-handed, it could backfire.
And push Rwanda further.
Exactly. It could even trigger a wider conflict.
So they're walking a tightrope.
Trying to find that delicate balance. And all the while, the people of Eastern DRC are stuck in the middle, just trying to survive.
It's heartbreaking. So where do we go from here? What are some possible scenarios?
Well, one possibility is that M23 just keeps advancing, takes even more control of Eastern DRC.
And then what?
Well, that could lead to a long and drawn-out conflict, a war of attrition. It would be devastating for the Congolese people.
Like how
I'm
devastating.
talking millions displaced, entire communities destroyed, a full-blown humanitarian catastrophe.
And then you got the risk of neighboring countries getting pulled in, right? Turning a local conflict into a massive regional war. I mean, this whole area is already so fragile, with all the ethnic tensions and history of conflict.
Exactly. It's like a powder keg waiting to explode. Think about the domino effect, Uganda, Burundi, Tanzania, they all have their own interests, and they're all vulnerable in some way. It wouldn't take much to set the whole region off. And then you've got countries like China, Russia, the
Oh
US.
yeah, they're definitely watching.
They all have their own agendas, their own economic interests.
So it's not just about the DRC. This has implications for the whole region, maybe even for the balance of power globally. So of all of this, what worries you the most?
Honestly, the humanitarian crisis, it's already so bad, and it could easily spiral out of control. We're talking about millions of people who've been displaced, who are facing hunger, disease, violence. The UN saying there could be a famine, and aid agencies are struggling to even reach the people who need help. It's just that it's a massive tragedy, and it's getting worse every day.
And it feels like the world is just sitting back and watching. Can the international community actually do anything to stop this from getting even worse?
Well, there aren't any easy solutions, that's for sure. This is complex, there's no quick fix, but they can't just do nothing. The African Union needs to step up, be more proactive. Maybe they could deploy a peacekeeping force to try and separate the warring factions, protect civilians.
But do you think the AU can actually do that? I mean, they've had trouble agreeing on things in the past, and this is so complicated.
I know, it's a long shot. But maybe this crisis could be what forces them to cooperate. The stakes are so high, not just for the DRC and the region, but for the African Union itself.
And what about the UN Security Council? Don't they have the power to do something? Like authorize bigger peacekeeping missions, impose stricter sanctions, maybe even refer people to the International Criminal Court? Could that happen?
It's possible, but it depends on the political will of the big players. And right now, with all of the global tension, the divisions between the West and countries like Russia and China, it's hard to see them finding common ground on something like this.
So you're saying the fate of millions comes down to the self-interest of a handful of powerful countries?
Unfortunately, yeah, that's often how it works. But that doesn't mean we should give up hope. There are things we can do, even as individuals. Stay informed, spread the word, put pressure on our elected officials, support the organizations that are working to help people in the DRC. It might seem small, but all of it matters.
It's easy to feel powerless when you're up against something this big. But like you said, awareness is the first step, and action follows. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question. What are you going to do with what you learned today? Are you going to tell other people about it? Learn more, maybe even find a way to help the people who are suffering?
It's your call. But even when things seem darkest, there's always hope. The DRC is in a terrible situation, but it's not over. If we keep paying attention, if we work together, if we're committed to finding peaceful solutions, there's still a chance to prevent this from turning into even more chaos and suffering.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. It's been a really intense conversation. We'll definitely keep following this story and keep you updated. Until then, stay informed, stay curious, and stay engaged.